really interesting show for you today. I've got a good friend of mine that I've wanted to bring on for quite a while, and he brought with him his partner, and they're going to talk about a lot of great things that they have going on, and then also that the profession of law enforcement uh, constantly has to focus on these days as we police in an atmosphere where we're really not the most popular people in the world. So I appreciate these two guys coming on to share some of their experiences and their thoughts. Giovanni, Rocco, and Dutch, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Betsy. Great to be here.
You guys, I really appreciate you coming on, and I'm going to start this by asking each of you a question that I always ask anybody who has been in law enforcement. Why did you become a cop?
It's better than jail.
And I mean, and you know what? You bring up a good point, because I've talked to other guests about this. Not everybody who becomes a police officer was like, you know, an altar boy and, you know, head of the 4-H club and all that stuff. Right, Giovanni?
Right. Yeah, that was me. I mean, I'm third generation police. So, you know, I knew I had that burning desire in my belly to want to do it. I just didn't know I was capable of it until later in my life.
Dutch, how about you? What led you to your career?
Yeah, I don't my dad was a blue collar worker. He worked in a factory building semi trucks, transmissions. My mom worked in a factory. I never knew a policeman or a policewoman or a cop in my life. I seen them, you know, I saw them around, but my involvement with them wasn't bad or good. They were just part of life. We left a small town in Iowa and moved to a larger city outside of Detroit called Ypsilanti, Michigan. And there I saw police doing kind of work that was, I don't know, it kind of controlled the chaos. And I saw them a little more as a positive thing. You know, they were kind of like superhero looking to me. The uniforms and their cars and their presence was cool. But mostly I just thought it was going to be exciting. It looked like an exciting job. Like you got to kind of do fun bad guy stuff without the consequences of getting into bad guy trouble, you know.
That's a great way to put it. So Giovanni, you know, you did regular police work, and then you took on something that most cops don't. Talk about your career and how you and Dutch got together.
Yeah, I kind of did it full circle. I started out in patrol, walking the beat, right? Walking midnights in the cold weather. I was a city cop in New Jersey, and I did that for a while. And then I was worked my way into the narcotics and plainclothes division. Kind of did a little bit of a stint in there, couple of years. And during that time, I started dipping my toes into the undercover world, doing little layups here and there, little, you know, corner boys buying little bags of dope here and there. And then it kind of led into bigger things, onto the DEA. And then did that for a number of years. I went on to a task force with them, and then I finished my career with the FBI on a task force with the FBI task force.
Dutch, how about you?
Yeah, I was a street cop. Actually, went through by a long story and an unplanned design. I went through the police academy at 20 years old. I wasn't even 21 at the time. I couldn't own a firearm or buy ammunition, but I was allowed to carry it. And the sheriff's office owned my weapon and bought my ammunition. So early in my career in the 90s, the methamphetamine was sweeping through the Midwest, and there was active, you know, meth cooks going on. There was all the things that come with, you know, heavy drug use. And once I kind of got a taste for chasing the meth guys and girls around and kind of just being a part of that, I had just imagined and dreamed of working undercover and going into that dark world and seeing what the other side looked like. So it didn't take me long. I think I spent a couple of years working in patrol, and then I just did everything I could to try to build my resume to get into narcotics or one of the detective divisions, because I wanted to work undercover. I just was drawn to me.
Undercover work takes a real toll on a law enforcement officer and also on their family. Let's talk about that, guys.
Yeah, I think I started out, like I said, at the street level, and I didn't have much training. I brought what I had trained in the street as a kid. I brought that to my career in law enforcement. And I started doing little things here and there. I relied a lot on informants, like traditional narcotics detectives do, small time buys that were very dangerous at the time, because I worked a lot of gangs, a lot of projects, low income housing. And when you walk in there, you don't have a badge and a gun and you can't call timeout. So I quickly realized I was addicted to the adrenaline. So the more danger I put myself in, and looking back, I was so foolish for it. Almost lost my life a bunch of times. I can count on every finger I have, at least. And then it was just, that addiction became more and more. And then as I received training, but I also work major case. So what I saw at homicide scenes, what I saw at, different crime scenes, I brought that to my undercover world. It calloused me. So when I needed to be a hitman or a murder for hire, it made me that calloused individual that was capable. When you look into somebody's eyes, and Dutch and I talk about it often, you can look in somebody's eyes when they've done the ultimate deed, and you have to have that characteristic. So you have to be. It's not just an act that you can pull off. You're not on TV, and you're not doing an episode on a police show. And then you come home, and it's the adrenaline dump afterwards. But it's such a rush. It's such a rush.
Dutch, you're a kid from the Midwest, right? Like me, Midwest,
Yep.
nice. Here you are, age 20 in the police academy, and then you get drawn toward that dark underbelly of undercover. Talk about that.
Yeah, I didn't grow up rough. I didn't grow up with a hard life. My parents, worked hard and gave us decent things, and the community we lived in, I didn't have a lot of gangs and issues like that. But even working as a deputy sheriff in the Midwest and the rural parts back then, I had never been around domestic violence and child abuse and senseless killings and things like that. And no matter where you're at in the country, you see those things and you start to realize it's everywhere. It doesn't matter where you grew up or where you're at. It's present and it's around us. We just don't all get to see it. So working on the road, you were talking about the impacts of stress and mental health and all those kinds of things. And law enforcement today and then, I think, are asked to do so many different kinds of tasks, whether it's talk someone out of suicide, de-escalate domestic violence. On the one hand, as a human being, you see all sides of these things, and it's hard to imagine any good or evil in it at all. It just seems like life. So those stressors do attack you. Car wrecks, children losing their lives, entire families losing their lives. Like that weighs on all first responders, I think, heavily, and you carry those with you. But working undercover, I don't know. That was a different scenario. I think the hardest thing for me working undercover was, at least when you wore a uniform and a badge, you'd come home and take it off. You could hang it up and kind of disappear into the world. But working undercover, the way I look now is the way I looked then has always truly been me. But you don't hang the hat up as easily. You come home walking and talking to walk on a street, and then you got to take your kid to swimming lessons and send them on to parents that are financial advisors and teachers and software engineers, and so they're looking at you and you feel like an outcast. And that is definitely something hard. I'm not going to make up any excuses and say my job was a reason that I wasn't a better dad or a better husband, but I definitely think it had an influence on those things.
Yeah, absolutely. So you guys both made it out, and now you have this wildly popular podcast, and everybody loves true crime podcasts now, right? The country is obsessed with them. Talk about what you guys are doing and why it's so popular.
Yeah, we're the host of the podcast. The podcast is Inside the Life, with Giovanni and Dutch, and it's hosted by the Mob Museum in Las Vegas. They're the Mob Museum is the organized crime museum and law enforcement museum in Las Vegas, and they came to us and asked us if we would host a show, and it's been going great. We're about 7 episodes premiered already, and just a great lineup of guests, great content, showing what it's like to be inside the life that we lived, and a little bit of the life from the underworld for people that didn't choose the path that we took, maybe took a little bit of a criminal path and had some stories of redemption later on. And then we do a little pop culture. Little pop culture is some of the people who maybe portrayed some of the criminals and the arch criminals and the police officers on TV and movies. And they tell what their life is like portraying our lives on TV and movies.
Dutch, what's your favorite part of the show?
Well, to tell you the truth, I grew up in the Midwest, and I know you did too. And so the mafia and the mob museum and all of that is something kind of new to me. I didn't grow up around wise guys. I never even knew much about the culture. So it's fun for me to be in there. And Giovanni is great at kind of taking the reins and leading us down, the Italian culture and the mafia lifestyle. And I think I'm kind of that voice that's in there like, all right, well, what's it look like to do a 60-kilo heroin deal, like, were you guys carrying like AK-47s? Like, were you wearing suits and ties? Were you driving Cadillacs? Like, I kind of bring the details out for the rest of us that don't know that part of inside the life. I have my own stories on my own very interesting things that have happened to me, but I had never been around a mafia family or never even entertained the idea that I would even play a role in a mafia family until I met Giovanni.
Well, and Giovanni, you do a phenomenal job of communicating to people what that life was like. You're an incredible public speaker. You're also an entrepreneur. You're a really busy guy, and you. And I know you did this for me, where you were really able to bring to life what that kind of life is really like for a law enforcement officer. Because again, most people see it right on TV or in the movies or things like that. And even people who are cops, I was undercover, but it was a statewide situation. Your situation was literally international and frankly crazier than most movies are made about it.
Oh, thanks. It was a wild, but Dutch and I have had wild rides together and independently. We were blessed. I mean, later in our career, the unit that we were in was a national covert unit, and it was an international unit as well. And we just worked anything from street crimes like you described, right? Because that's where my passion was, going back to where we started, right? Bringing it back to where it all began. I would love and just rolling up on a corner right now on a bicycle, buying little bags of dope, right? But at the end of our career, we were working foreign counterintelligence. We were doing all kinds of crazy spy stuff. So whoever thought, like 2 TFOs, 2 cops from the Midwest and a cop from the East Coast. And here we are doing this crazy work. So it's a blessing, and I'm honored to be able to do it with Dutch. Because our relationship outside the show and work, even when we were undercover, has always been what you see on film when we're together. We've always had that dynamic. That's the minute we met in a training, and it's always been like that. So when it did come time for me to infiltrate the mafia, there's nobody else I would have used but Dutch. There's not an Italian guy I'm looking to bring in, some slickback, as they call him, or another dude that had an O at the end of his name, a vowel. It was Dutch, and he relied on me as much as I relied on him at times. And it just works. So being able to share these stories and just to show everybody the life of crime and the life that people go down. Yeah, they portray it. Everybody wants to watch a good gangster movie, a good mobster movie, no matter what the genre is. You're Asian crime, it doesn't matter, right? Italian mafia, bikers. But for us, it was hard because we can relate to it. Dutch and I, we did different roles. He cleans up well. Don't let the look fool you. He cleans up really well. And, and we just do it so great together. And it's nice to let the viewers enjoy it and listen to the stories.
Dutch, Hollywood loves to portray undercover cops as dirty and, they're snorting coke and taking money and taking hookers home and all that kind of stuff. First of all, does that infuriate you? And secondly, can you talk about the realities?
Yeah, and I'm actually really, Sarge, I'm glad you brought that up, because I think everybody assumes and wants to know that, and the theatrical impression of us is what it is. But at the end of the line, like, we are sworn law enforcement officers that must live by integrity. We have to be honest. We have to tell the truth. Otherwise, what we're doing, I mean, we're basically deceptively sneaking into a world, and it's not to be taken lightly, and it's not to be mocked. It's not to be made fun of. And there's right and wrong, but as a law enforcement officer, you have to choose to do right. So no, we weren't allowed to have sex with people. We weren't allowed to do cocaine and do drugs. Honestly, the level of undercover that Giovanni and I were working at, we rarely even carried a gun. We never carried a badge or any kind of credentials. We had a limited support team with us. We weren't allowed to hang out with cops. We didn't report with cops. We didn't go to headquarters units and have coffee and briefings. So we kind of had to isolate ourselves from both sides of the world, but in doing so, you can never lose track of that integrity, you know, and telling the truth and making sure that the things in that affidavit are truthful and correctful, because at the end of one of our operations, someone's going to lose a life for sure. They may not die, but they may be going to prison for a lifetime or what seems like a lifetime. And so it's a big responsibility to go in at that level and take those freedoms from people. So it's got to be done with integrity. And we're not dirty, scummy people just out here partying, having a good time, you know?
Yeah, that is so well said. Giovanni, what's your favorite part about the show? Because you guys, you know, and I want people to listen to it because you guys seem to you have a great rapport and you have some fun. What's your favorite part of it?
We're getting used to it, right? We're used to wearing, again, body cameras and police officers. That's all new in the last, 10 years. They've been wearing body cameras, and it's really becoming mandatory now. You know, I hear these young guys complain about it. Well, we've been doing it our whole life and our whole career. We've been wearing cameras and recorders. God, that's 20 years, 30 years, right? So it's nice, but to have the camera pointed at you and having these big lenses, it was an adjustment for us. I think I speak for both of us where we were very nervous. It was as if we were being interrogated or we were sitting on a stand again, being cross-examined. So I enjoy getting used to it. I enjoy coming out of my shell. It's very cathartic for me. I'll speak for myself on that, where, yeah, each episode that we do, and the museum and our team, I can't tell you, is a tremendous bunch of people, and they help us get more and more comfortable with it. And I just love being able to tell people, good, bad, or ugly. I love telling their stories. I love people sharing their stories, right? Because it's not all, like Dutch said, it's not all sexy, right? It's not all this glamorous mafia infiltration, outlaw bikers, or whatever it is. Sometimes people, they've only done a couple little things in their career, but they were major cases. And we want to be able to shine a light on them for the work and the sacrifice that they gave, right? Because every time you do this type of work, you're a true patriot. These people laid their life down over a couple of bags of dope or maybe a couple of kilos. They could have walked away, you know, in a casket or in a body bag. So just to give them that platform and to honor them, that's my ultimate privilege.
And Dutch, you know, and you kind of alluded to this. This kind of works tough on your relationships, right?
Oh yeah. Yeah. I mean, at some points I had multiple cell phones, multiple laptops, multiple cars. I'm traveling in and out of the different areas under different names. And, you know, it's hard being married when you're telling the truth and you're answering all the questions. But when you say you're going to leave for 10 days and go to another state and I won't answer the phone until I get back, and then you come home like, what'd you do? Hung out the strip club, went to a party, bought some cocaine. I mean, not a lot of relationships can deal with that kind of stuff. So the discipline comes in making sure that you find a balance there. And I'm not going to say I totally ever figured it out, but it's something that needs to be done if you want to maintain it, you know?
Yeah, oh, absolutely. Giovanni, we just have a couple of minutes left, but mental health, police officer and first responder mental health has become a real passion for you. Talk about that for a minute.
It has. I mean, my career ended abruptly. My career ended at the end of the Italian mafia case where I was relocated and forced to retire, relocate my family, and just really, my wife was law enforcement too. She worked undercover, but here I am, had to destroy everything. And looking back, I have a lot of regret, but you know, it took me a long time to piece it together. So I was in a dark place for a while. I think Dutch and I both shared some similarities in that when our careers came to an end. And you could go down a rabbit hole, you know. So for me, it was cathartic, and it was. I learned a lot about myself when I get out and speak, and when I applied my mental health strategies that I learned along the way towards the end of my career. I speak a lot about breath work and mindfulness long before it was popular. I was deploying that in my undercover life, the breath work and understanding your ticks and tells. We go above and beyond. So now to share it with these guys and girls that are in law enforcement today, that's the most important thing, because so many are taking their lives today. You know, it's the easy way out. So I have to keep doing something to support them, and that's the way I do it. I mean, this show is a great platform for me to reach out to, but doing my speaking engagements and getting out there with Dutch and just bringing awareness to it, it's educational.
So, guys, where can people not find you? We don't want that to happen. But where can they find the show? Where can they find the Mob Museum? By the way, for anybody who's traveling to Las Vegas, it's a fantastic place to go to see just amazing displays, have a cocktail, and so talk about that for a second before we wrap up.
Go ahead, Dutch.
Yeah, it's the Mob and Law Enforcement Museum, and I know particularly with the podcast with Inside the Life, I think what they're hoping for us to do is tell the relationship between law enforcement and organized crime. It's not picking a team. It's not saying good and bad. It's not saying anything other than like, what's it truly life inside the life? Like, what does it look like between law enforcement and organized crime? And organized crime is a span of street gangs to mafiosos to cartel groups to anything you can imagine to be organized crime. And the Mob Museum is a beautiful place. There's a speakeasy in the basement. You can have some cocktails, have some drinks. Throughout the museum, you're going to need a good amount of time. You're going to need a few hours because you think you can just walk through it real quick, get a drink, and go back to the casino life that you're used to. But once you're inside the Mob Museum, you'll want to spend some time there. It is very, very impressive. You can find us on Inside the Life Pod on Instagram and Giovanni on the Facebook one.
It's Facebook Inside the Life. You can go on insidethelife.org is our website. You can catch all the episodes on that. Apple, our episodes premiere on Apple Music or Apple Podcast, Apple Pod.
Yep.
It's all
Apple, Spotify, YouTube.
I sound like a teenager now, but yeah, all those platforms. You can find it pretty much anywhere. Insidethelife.org, and it'll lead you to that. And bring your families to the museum. I mean, it really is. For the longest time, I couldn't go to the museum because I was infiltrating the mafia out in Vegas. And I would always drive by and wish I could get in there. But yeah, visit it. It's an awesome place. You can bring the kids. It's very family friendly. And they're always changing exhibits, moving things around. So even if you visited before, come back and see all the new stuff we have. It's awesome.
Absolutely. Well, guys, I am so grateful that we were able to have a conversation. Everybody go find the podcast. You're going to want to binge it. Believe me, you can't just listen to one episode. And if you would like more information about the National Police Association, visit us at nationalpolice.org.
Are you passionate about supporting law enforcement? The National Police Association is on a mission to strengthen our communities, protect our families, and ensure justice prevails. But they need your help. Every dollar you donate makes a difference. It funds the legal defense of police officers and police agencies, supports advocacy for pro-law enforcement legislation, and funds community outreach programs and education. Imagine safer streets, stronger bonds between officers and neighborhoods, and a brighter future for all. Join us. Visit our website at nationalpolice.org to donate today.